Welcome to the TechUP 503 podcast. In this space for conversation and reflection, we explore current events from El Salvador and around the world together. You can support this project via PayPal and through the links found in the description. Find US on your favorite platform. We're on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, virtually everywhere as TechUP 503. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us today.
So I want to jump right into the overview for today's deep dive because we have a lot of really intense ground to cover. We are going to be unpacking a massive, truly massive geopolitical escalation happening right now between the United States and Iran.
Right, the global shockwaves from that are just, well, they're unavoidable at this point.
Exactly, and we'll explore how those global shockwaves are directly impacting the local economy down in El Salvador. Then we're going to investigate the hidden, almost unbelievable financial architects behind Jeffrey Epstein's empire.
That part is just staggering.
It really is.
Yeah.
And finally, we'll wrap up by analyzing the extreme scarcity of Bitcoin as it stares down this really futuristic, existential quantum computing threat.
And, for you listening right now, it might seem like looking at a news cycle full of fragmented chaos. A military clash in the Persian Gulf seems like a world away from a local infrastructure project in Central America, right?
Yeah, they seem totally disconnected.
Exactly. Completely disconnected from like a shadow banking ledger in New York or the code of digital assets. But we are here to show you the invisible wiring underneath the floorboards. Whether you are paying for gas at the pump, managing your personal investments, or just trying to understand the terrifying headlines on your feed, today's deep dive connects the dots.
Because it's all connected.
It is. We're going to show you exactly how a single point of failure in one domain forces a catastrophic reaction in your personal financial reality.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start at the macro level, the absolute boiling point of current global tensions. Because the tactical maneuvers happening in the Middle East right now, they essentially dictate the economic reality for the rest of this deep dive.
Yeah, everything flows downstream from the energy markets.
Right. So I want to deliver a rapid-fire, completely impartial intelligence briefing on this United States and Iran conflict. We are just looking at the source material here, and it actually begins with a severe domestic spillover.
The California warning, right?
Exactly. In early February 2026, there was a major federal law enforcement alert issued to local authorities in California. The intelligence suggested that Iran was allegedly preparing a surprise asymmetric attack.
Wow.
Yeah, specifically utilizing drones, unmanned aerial vehicles, launched from an unidentified commercial-looking vessel floating somewhere off the coast of the continental United States.
And that is terrifying because strategically, that completely bypasses traditional radar nets. The system's designed to look for intercontinental ballistic missiles dropping from the atmosphere.
Right, the early warning systems.
Exactly. A drone launched from like a converted container ship just 50 miles offshore gives you virtually zero early warning.
And that lack of warning prompted a severely elevated readiness level. We saw the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department drastically increase visible patrols around places of worship and cultural institutions. They were bracing for a localized shockwave.
And unfortunately, we've already seen that tension manifest.
Yeah, we really have. There was a horrific lone wolf attack at a Michigan synagogue, the Temple Israel in West Bloomfield. A man actually rammed his vehicle through the building and opened fire. He ultimately died in a shootout with local police.
Just tragic. But strategically speaking, these domestic incidents are symptoms of the larger systemic breakdown occurring overseas.
Right, in the Levant and the Gulf. Let's look at that breakdown. Staying strictly impartial with the reports, we are seeing a massive tactical shift from Hezbollah. They recently fired over 100 missiles simultaneously at Israel.
Over 100 at once.
Over 100. It's the largest single barrage of the current conflict. It activated air raid sirens across Kiryat Shmona, Haifa, and the Golan Heights.
And that isn't just harassment, 100 missile barrage is a saturation attack. It's explicitly designed to overwhelm the mathematics of the Iron Dome defense system.
Yeah, exactly. But the theater of engagement is widening way beyond Israel. Down in Iraq, military clashes have intensified to a level we haven't seen in years. We have reports of the downing of a United States KC-135 Stratotanker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, resulting in the deaths of 4 military personnel. Now, Iraqi resistance groups are publicly claiming they shot it down with a surface-to-air missile, but the United States Central Command is citing a mid-air collision, stating it wasn't hostile fire.
We need to pause here and look at the mechanics of what a stratotanker actually is, because it explains the vulnerability of the entire military apparatus.
Go ahead, break that down.
A stratotanker is basically a flying gas station. It is a massive, highly vulnerable, unarmored aircraft that provides mid-air refueling. Modern fighter jets consume fuel at an astonishing rate.
Right, they can't stay up forever.
Exactly. Their operational range is actually really limited without these tankers and a holding pattern nearby. If you take out the tankers, you effectively ground the fighter jets. You blind the Air Force.
So the loss of a stratotanker, whether it was a missile or a pilot error, it instantly shrinks the umbrella of air superiority.
Completely.
And the logistics network took a second hit. Another stratotanker, specifically tail number 63 Eddy 17, sustained heavy damage. It managed to limp back and land safely at Ben Gurion Airport in Israel, but it was broadcasting the emergency squawk code 7700 just before touchdown.
Which indicates a critical in-flight emergency.
Right. Combine that with the fact that 19 United States military personnel recently had to be medically evacuated from Saudi Arabia to Germany due to injuries from Iranian strikes. The picture is getting incredibly grim.
Yeah, the pressure is mounting everywhere.
But perhaps the most precise and damaging strike occurred in Qatar. High-resolution satellite imagery confirms severe destruction at the Al Udeid Air Base, specifically at coordinates 25 degrees, 8 minutes north, and 51 degrees, 19 minutes east. A massive radome and a cluster of critical satellite dishes were annihilated by an Iranian drone and missile strike.
Think about what a radome is. It's that massive, golf ball-looking dome you see at radar installations. Its job is to protect highly sensitive, rotating radar antennas from the elements, while remaining transparent to radio waves.
So hitting that is a big deal.
Striking the radomes and the satellite dishes is the equivalent of gouging out the eyes and cutting the auditory nerves of the military base. You aren't just destroying concrete, you are blinding the early warning systems for the entire peninsula.
Wow. And the strikes didn't stop at military hardware. An Iranian drone directly struck the Dubai Financial Center.
See, that right there is the bridge between kinetic warfare and economic warfare. By hitting a financial hub, the message is crystal clear. They're saying your sovereign wealth funds, your banking infrastructure, your glass towers of capital are just as vulnerable to a $20,000 loitering munition as a concrete bunker is.
Right, capital requires physical safety to operate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Take away the physical safety, and the capital instantly flees.
And we are seeing the rhetoric from the leaders match this exact escalation. Again, looking at this impartially, Iran's supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, addressed his nation, demanding that all United States bases in the region close immediately or face continuous bombardment.
He's drawing a hard line.
Very hard. He explicitly vowed revenge, stating his military will seize or destroy an equivalent amount of United States assets. And, as a surreal little footnote to all this tension, state media actually had to issue a frantic correction, noting that Khamenei's wife is actually alive, contradicting prior broadcast reports.
It's just bizarre, the things that slip through in the chaos of war.
Seriously. On the opposite side, Donald Trump claimed that the United States is actively destroying the Iranian regime, quoting here, militarily, economically, and otherwise. He openly threatened to wipe out their entire national power grid in an hour.
And that specific threat about the power grid is the linchpin for everything we're going to discuss today.
Right, because Iranian official Ali Larijani responded directly to that threat. He said, and I quote, "If they do that, the whole region will plunge into darkness. A great opportunity to hunt the United States military."
But the darkness he is talking about isn't just electrical. It is economic.
If we connect this to the bigger picture.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we are witnessing the ultimate weaponization of energy. In his address, Khamenei explicitly confirmed that Iran will continue to use the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz as their primary lever of strategic pressure.
Let's lay out the geography there for people.
So, the Strait of Hormuz is a narrow, incredibly shallow stretch of water between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Roughly 20 to 30% of the world's total oil consumption passes through that tiny bottleneck every single day.
That's a massive choke point.
Huge. When that strait is blocked, The global energy market doesn't just panic, it goes into cardiac arrest. And the terrifying reality of the situation was laid bare by the United States Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
What did he say?
He openly admitted to the press that it is simply not militarily possible for the United States Navy, even backed by a coalition, to safely escort commercial oil tankers through the strait right now.
I have to push back on that, or at least play devil's advocate. We have carrier strike groups. We have the most advanced naval force in human history. How can a Treasury Secretary admit that it is mathematically impossible to escort civilian ships?
Because of the evolution of asymmetrical warfare. I mean, an aircraft carrier is designed to project power across oceans, right? To fight other massive fleets. It is incredibly ill-suited for a narrow, shallow strait where the enemy is using swarms of hundreds of explosive-laden speedboats.
And drones.
And sea mines that cost a few $100. You cannot put a billion-dollar destroyer in front of every single commercial oil tanker. The risk matrix is completely broken.
Because the insurance companies will just step in, right?
Exactly. Insurance companies will immediately refuse to underwrite the vessels, which means the ship owners refuse to sail. The physical blockade is achieved entirely through the threat of asymmetrical violence.
It's like playing a high-stakes game of Jenga, where pulling one military block like blocking a strait threatens to collapse the entire global supply chain.
That's exactly what it is.
So how long can emergency oil releases hold off a global economic freeze? Because we are seeing 32 countries coordinating to release 400 million barrels of oil right now.
And we need to understand the physical mechanics of that. Strategic reserves are usually housed in massive underground salt caverns. Pumping that oil out, transporting it to refineries, and getting it into the market is a slow, arduous logistical nightmare.
It's not a spigot you just turn on.
No, not at all.
And even with 400 million barrels, the United States just issued a highly unusual 30-day waiver allowing the purchase of Russian oil to stabilize markets. Oil that was heavily sanctioned. Secretary Bessent tried to downplay it, but my instinct says they are panicking to keep the lights on in Europe.
Your instinct is dead on. Emergency reserves are just a temporary bandage. When the daily flow out of the Middle East stops, the cost of manufacturing spikes, shipping doubles, fertilizer skyrockets, the United States government realizes a global recession is a far greater immediate threat than allowing a few sanctioned Russian tankers to offload.
And that leads us perfectly into how these global tremors shake El Salvador, because global oil crises don't just stay neatly contained in the Middle East, right?
Not at all. They dictate the cost of shipping, food, and daily life everywhere. When the fuel line is pinched in the Middle East, a maritime shipping container across the Pacific might jump from $2,000 to $12,000 overnight.
And that cost is immediately passed down to the consumer at the grocery store in San Salvador.
Exactly.
And we are seeing the Salvadoran government scramble to manage this. They have had to intervene directly in the domestic corn market to prevent panic-driven price speculation, establishing 4 specific state-controlled sale points.
It is a textbook macro to micro intervention. The state is stepping in to artificially absorb the shock of global inflation to protect the most vulnerable citizens.
But the contrast on the ground is wild, because despite those global fears, domestic investment resilience is still a thing. Super Selectos is pushing forward with a $3.5 million store opening in San Francisco Gotera.
Really?
Yeah, and luxury real estate like Barima Costa del Sol is moving forward aggressively. Capital is still flowing into long-term infrastructure.
That bifurcation is common in developing economies during stress. Institutional capital operates on a 5 to 10-year horizon. They look past the current oil shock.
But then you look at the shifting landscape of San Salvador. The new Metro Cable project linking Mexicanos to Parque Cuscatlán. It's an 18-month project designed to move 7,000 passengers an hour, starting at 3 a.m. for the working class.
Which is incredibly efficient for a city with complex topography. It returns time and energy to the local economy.
Right, but let me ask you this. With global supply chains threatened by the Hormuz blockade, aren't massive infrastructure projects like a metro cable highly vulnerable to sudden material shortages?
Oh, completely vulnerable. Heavy machinery requires diesel. Specialized steel cables come from abroad. If ships refuse to sail, construction just stalls. It's the perfect, agonizing example of how a drone strike in Qatar can physically delay a construction worker's commute in San Salvador.
And meanwhile, there's the controversial dismantling of 250 commercial stalls in the historic center of San Salvador. They're trading the survival of the informal street vendors for the aesthetic appeal to macro investors.
It's the brutal reality of accelerated urban redevelopment.
Plus, just quick local updates. We've seen widespread water suspensions in San Salvador and La Libertad due to Tesla maintenance in Najapa.
A power grid fix shutting down the water supply.
Yeah. And ongoing fatal traffic accidents like the horrific trailer crash on Los Procedes. There's also a proposed immigration reform affecting minimum stays and loss of naturalization.
It's a lot of systemic friction all at once.
And on top of it, major transparency concerns. Independent reports indicate 31 bodies found nationally this year in clandestine circumstances, but only 5 appear in official police records. Meanwhile, the government has actively reproached NGOs for not denouncing the genocide caused by gangs in the past.
See, a data discrepancy of that magnitude regarding mortality figures is a massive red flag for institutional investors. Capital requires predictable data. If they can't trust the security metrics, they price that uncertainty into the national debt.
It's a profound web of vulnerabilities. But before we pivot into the dark, hidden financial architecture of Jeffrey Epstein's empire, we just need to take a quick pause. You are listening to a Tech UP 503 deep dive.
And if you value this kind of impartial analysis, unpacking the mechanics behind the headlines, we want to remind you that you can support this project directly via PayPal. You can find all the necessary links to support the show in the episode description.
We truly appreciate it. Okay, let's get back into it. We just looked at how nations wage economic war out in the open. Now let's explore how the ultra-wealthy use the financial system in the shadows. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, this is where the plumbing gets really dark.
I want to introduce this investigative journalism piece regarding Jeffrey Epstein's estate executors. We're talking about his accountant, Richard Kahn, and his lawyer, Darren Indyke.
The unseen mechanics of the operation.
Exactly. Let's set the scene. July 2019, the FBI raids Epstein's massive New York mansion. They find a highly fortified safe full of diamonds, thick bundles of loose cash, and encrypted hard drives.
The holy grail of evidence.
Right. But due to a technical paperwork error on the search warrant, they have to leave the safe, secure the room, and go get a corrected warrant. By the time they return, the safe is entirely empty. Kahn had allegedly ordered the mansion staff to empty the safe into suitcases and deliver them to his private residence.
It is a breathtaking display of obstruction.
And this web is still unraveling today. I mean, Prince Andrew's recent arrest in the United States and Canada's parliamentary move to permanently strip his royal succession line proves that the fallout is massive and ongoing.
Oh, absolutely.
But let's look at the specific human trafficking allegations against Kahn and Indyke. The lawsuit alleges they facilitated forced marriages for foreign victims to abuse United States immigration laws.
And that is just chilling.
They allegedly paid off immigration lawyers to secure green cards for these victims, effectively trapping them in the country. But how do you fund all this?
This is where we analyze the forensic accounting. Because moving millions of dollars to fund a trafficking ring requires a masterclass in obfuscation. The duo allegedly managed roughly 140 different interconnected bank accounts.
140 accounts for one guy.
Yeah, the sheer volume is designed to exhaust auditors. They allegedly used a completely fake design company in New York as a front, paying regular salaries to victims and recruiters under the guise of legitimate corporate payroll.
But what about the physical cash? Because you don't pay street-level fixers with a wire transfer.
Exactly. And this brings us to a concept called structuring. Under the Bank Secrecy Act, any cash transaction over $10,000 triggers an automatic report to the federal government.
A massive red flag.
Right. So Indyke allegedly cashed 45 separate checks.
45 checks?
Yeah, and every single one was for exactly $7,500. Mathematically ducking right under the $10,000 reporting threshold.
That is insane.
And it gets worse. The lawsuit claims there were 97 separate ATM withdrawals of exactly $1,000 from a machine located right near his Manhattan office.
Okay, I have to push back here. If these men were the architects of the financial plumbing, how is it possible they claim total ignorance of the water flowing through it? Is the global banking system just designed to turn a blind eye as long as the paperwork is filed? I mean, 97 ATM withdrawals.
It's the architecture of private wealth management. Billionaires don't bank like you and me. The compliance departments are structurally incentivized to accept plausible explanations from high-powered lawyers. The bank argues they are just processing authorized transactions, not investigating the moral end use of the cash.
And the payouts for building this blind architecture were huge. Between 2011 and 2019, Indike received $16 million, and Khan received $10 million.
Astounding amounts of money.
And now they completely control Epstein's $635 million estate. They used estate funds to quietly settle a $105 million lawsuit with United States Virgin Islands. They also manage a $121 million victim compensation fund.
But there's a catch with that fund, right?
A huge catch. They allegedly inserted clauses to protect themselves from liability. If a victim accepted the compensation, they were legally forced to sign an agreement preventing them from ever suing Khan or Indike.
Wow. They literally use the dead man's money to legally buy their own immunity.
Exactly. And if traditional banking allows lawyers and accountants to hide millions in plain sight like this, it completely explains why so many are turning to decentralized finance.
It really does. It's the ultimate migration toward transparent mathematical ledgers.
Which brings us to our final topic, the ultimate safe haven, Bitcoin. But as Bitcoin becomes incredibly scarce, it is staring down an existential futuristic threat.
Yeah, the internal economics right now are entering a phase of extreme scarcity.
Let's analyze the current market boom. BTC has unexpectedly spiked to $73,600, and the Binance Scarcity Index just hit a 5-month high of 5.7. Explain what that means.
A reading of 5.7 basically means immediate liquidity is drying up fast. Investors are aggressively buying the asset and immediately withdrawing it into cold storage. The supply sitting on exchanges is plummeting.
And the whales are leading the charge. Data shows that whale wallets entities holding between 1,000 to 10,000 BTC have crossed 20,000 wallets for the first time in history.
And to understand the supply shock, you have to look at the long-term holders. In this 2025 cycle, they've only spent 15.1 million BTC.
Which is actually less than the 15.3 million they spent taking profits in the 2021 cycle.
Yeah, exactly. The veteran holders are refusing to sell, the whales are accumulating, and exchange liquidity is vanishing.
And the macroeconomic signals are screaming. Analysts point to the stochastic RSI cross of the United States and China 10-year yields.
Yeah, that's a massive global liquidity indicator.
Alongside technicals like the 100-week simple moving average holding firm, all this points to a potential $100,000 BTC price by August.
But there is a silent variable rapidly approaching.
The quantum threat. We have a recent institutional report outlining the 5 stages of quantum risk to Bitcoin.
Right now, we are at stage 0.
So no immediate danger.
Right. By stage 1 and 2, quantum computers stabilize enough to help with chemistry and breaking really basic cryptography. But they can't touch Bitcoin's core architecture yet.
But then there's stage 3. The report estimates that's roughly 10 to 20 years away. That is when quantum computers become powerful enough to slowly break elliptic curve cryptography.
And by stage 4, they can break it in minutes.
What's fascinating here is how the vulnerability is actually distributed, because 65.4% of the supply, about 13 million BTC, is sitting in modern non-vulnerable addresses.
Right, the public key is hidden behind a hash.
Exactly. Another 25%, or 5 million BTC, is vulnerable but active. The owners can simply migrate their funds to upgraded addresses when the threat gets close.
But it's the final slice of the pie that is the ultimate target.
Yeah. 8.6% of the circulating supply, which is 1.7 million BTC, sits in legacy P2PK addresses, pay to public key.
And these are considered entirely lost.
Completely lost. The early miners threw away the hard drives a decade ago. They cannot be migrated. They are the ultimate honeypot for a future quantum hacker. The first person to build a stage 4 quantum computer gets 1.7 million Bitcoin.
And the crazy part is, the solution already exists. BIP 360 proposes making taproot addresses fully quantum resistant. The cryptography is ready.
So what's the holdup?
The true obstacle isn't the technology, it's Bitcoin's decentralized governance, getting the global community to reach a consensus to implement it.
It's like knowing a massive meteor is going to hit your house in 15 years. The blueprints for a titanium roof are already drawn up, but you have to get 10,000 independent roommates to unanimously agree on the color before you can build it.
That is the perfect analogy. The friction is immense.
So the question is, will the community act in time?
They'll have to, or risk utter devastation.
What an incredible journey we've taken today. To concisely recap this deep dive, we started with the macroeconomic warfare over oil in the Middle East, the threats to the Strait of Hormuz, and how those shocks immediately affect El Salvador's local markets and massive infrastructure projects.
Right.
Then we exposed the corrupt structuring of traditional finance by Epstein's enablers, hiding millions in plain sight. And finally, we looked at the future of wealth facing off against the existential threat of quantum computers.
It all comes back to systemic vulnerability.
It really does. And I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to ponder. If a quantum computer eventually cracks those 1.7 million lost Bitcoin from the network's earliest days, it won't just be a neat technological hack. It will represent the greatest sudden redistribution of dormant wealth in human history.
Undeniably.
So will the first nation or corporation to achieve quantum supremacy use it publicly to break enemy military codes? Or will they just quietly, invisibly drain dead crypto wallets in the dark to fund their empires?
It completely reframes the technological arms race. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
You have been listening to Tech UP 503. We urge you to support the show via PayPal using the links provided in the description so we can keep bringing you this analysis. Thank you for your time, and a warm goodbye until the next deep dive.